Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar from Friendly Phishing. We're very excited you're here. I've just started the webinar, so just going to give it a few minutes to let everyone come into the room, and then we'll kick off. So give it about 2 minutes and we'll get started. All right, I think we will get started. So thanks everyone for joining us. My name is Laura. I'm the marketing manager here for Friendly Phishing. And today we put together a webinar for you all called Emails, Errors, and Eckhart Tolle. We're going to go through the cyber threats affecting Commonwealth, state, and territory government staff and how to combat them. I'll hand over shortly to Damien Grace, who's our Executive Director of Friendly Phishing. But just a quick run through of the agenda we'll go through. First of all, welcome. Thanks for joining us. We'll run through Cyber CX quickly, a workplace scenario, a cyber update, and some case studies. The main thing, if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to use the questions function within the webinar, and we'll be sure to answer those at the end. So over to you, Damien.
Thanks, Laura, and welcome everyone to this webinar, Emails, Errors, and Eckhart Tolle. Just a quick little bit of background around myself, which will help sort of set the scene, I think, for what we've got coming forward. And so I've been in the industry for coming close to 20 years. And at one point there, I was head of ethical hacking for Shearwater Solutions, and we were doing what we now classify as kind of a traditional style phishing email, which is let's send out the hardest email we can to as many people as we can, try to trick as many people as we can. And then sometimes on this, we try to exploit people, get steal credentials, get onto their network and all of that sort of fun stuff. And this is kind of going back, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago now, probably. And what we were seeing then was phishing was going to become the #1 risk for most organizations. It was the easiest way to get information out of an organization, the easiest way to get into an organization. And at the time, phishing really wasn't on many people's radar. Since then, we've seen that it's really exploded, obviously, in popularity. Everyone is now aware of it. I think ransomware was probably one of the big contributors to bringing that into everyone's awareness, especially at a board level. As part of that, we grew the Friendly Phishing product designed to help people. And the Friendly Phishing product now has actually been rolled into the Cyber CX group of companies. So Cyber CX now has pulled in 17 different bespoke cybersecurity organizations within Australia and New Zealand. We're now the greatest force of cybersecurity experts in Australia. We're north of 650 people that are dedicated to cybersecurity, which is unheard of in Australia. And we cover everything end to end. There's really not anything that in cybersecurity that we can't sort of do and help you with. And as part of that, part of being part of this group, we obviously get access to see a lot more than what we were just seeing as part of friendly phishing. We see a lot more from the incident response side of things, and the like. And one of the first things that I want to do here is share with you a workplace scenario, something that we've seen happen, and I think it's interesting to share this with you. So what I'll do is I'll introduce, this here is Joan. Joan works for a company that we'll just call Fakeco. Joan also works with a guy called Theo. Theo here, he and his wife, they're really excited. They've got a brand new baby on the way. They've been putting up information about it on their social media, etc. And their network of friends are really excited to see this new bubs when it arrives. And then Joan one day receives an email. And that email is, hey everyone, we've just had the new bubs, he's been delivered, and here's some pictures for you to see. And so Joan's really excited. She's got a whole heap of people at work that she knows wants to know when this has happened. She sees that it's only been sent to her. So she forwards that on to other people in her organization. And she actually, in this instance, she forwarded it on to 17 people in the organization. Out of those 17 people, 9 of them actually clicked through on that link to have a look at those photos. What they were presented with was a login screen asking them to sign in so they can access the page. And then once they had accessed the page, once they put in their credentials, I should say, then they received a 404 page not found. Now, Joan's pretty persistent. She didn't think that was quite right. So she then reached out to Khalid. Khalid here is in IT. And so she said that, we've got these baby photos, we need to get access to them, can you help me out? And Khalid had a look and he identified that it was a phishing email. And so he replied back to her and included the CTO saying, hey, this was a phishing email. The CTO was also interested, so he had a look and clicked on that link as well and entered his credentials. Now, on top of that, Joan also has a husband. Her husband works for a completely separate company, but when she was having trouble accessing this email, she sent it off to him as well. He's more techie than what she is, so she thought maybe he'd be able to help work it out. And he also clicked on this email and entered his credentials as well. So let's look at this in a little bit more detail. So first thing is that email came in. Really, Joan kind of wasn't too bad in this area. She looked at it and went, okay, look, it's coming from the people I expect it to be coming from. It's coming from their email address. It's going to her email address. And then when she looked at the link, it looked somewhat legitimate. Newborn pics. So this is not like you would expect that could be legitimate. So when she forwarded it on, she wasn't thinking anything was wrong with this. Now, when everyone else then clicked on that link and they were brought up with that page, that Microsoft page, this is where, in this instance, they could have started to see red flags. I mean, the problem here is that in most organizations, seeing a Microsoft login page, like these days with Microsoft 0365, et cetera, and that being so prolific across so many organizations, people see this all the time, and quite often they don't even realize why it's popped up. They're just conditioned to enter their details. And so when it popped up, none of them kind of went, hang on, why is this baby pic site asking me to put in my credentials? 9 of them, all 9 of the people that clicked on it from within the organization, every single one of them entered their credentials into this. Then it went to the 404, and then again, most people go, oh, that's a bit strange. I'll press back, I might try it again, I might try it again from a different browser or whatever. The interesting thing here is that quite often what will happen is, and similar to what Jones, I should send it to IT and said, hey, can you do this? But people will often pass it around deeper within the organization saying, hey, I'm trying to access this. Does it work for you? And so, you know, a simple attack here can harvest tons of credentials. So now it's been identified that it's a phishing email. Khalid is like, okay, well, now I need to go and reset a bunch of passwords. I need to start looking into all of the details. I need to set off my normal incident response plan. Like, there's a ton of work that goes on the back of this as well. The CTO is also like, you know, this is a big hassle, and the cost and the time and the money and the effort that goes along with remediating something like this can be huge. And so not only is it affecting the company that she works for, but it also has a negative effect against her husband's company. And we don't even know if that husband's company at the time had even been told that he'd lost his credentials, that he'd entered those credentials. We don't know how or if that was reported at the time as well. So very simple attack can have a dramatic impact across an organization. And that really leads us into where we are now in terms of you know, the state of the world at the moment, as it were. And I mentioned before, so when we were doing those original phishing emails 6-7 years ago, phishing was known, but still the attack vector of choice was, I'm going to hack into someone's website and steal their database, or I'm going to try to get into their servers, you know, that are internet facing, you know, that sort of thing. There wasn't a huge amount of focus on social style attacks. The thing is that now that, you know, the security industry is really caught up. Hacking into a website, while possible, takes a ton of skill, takes a ton of effort, and is usually very noisy and loud, and any monitoring system is, you know, can pay attention to that and see that. And so it's harder to get the goods when you're going in through that. And same as from a network penetration test style, you know, or network hacking, it's a much harder way of going about it, when you can have someone that is fairly unskilled, not very sophisticated, and send out a phishing email and get the goods very, very easily. This is why things have changed. And so you see now that the biggest threats are, one, social attacks, and most of those are phishing emails. And then two, and this is the surprising one, is this error-based leaks. Errors are quickly becoming very high profile and very high on that list of things that people should be very, very concerned about. So the ACSC released their annual cyber threat report earlier this year, and almost immediately within the document, you'll see this text here where it says, phishing and spear phishing remain the most common methods used by cyber adversaries to harvest personal information or user credentials to gain access to networks or to distribute malicious content. It's absolutely gone from, you know, way down the tree to being one of the most important things that you need to be aware of from a cybersecurity standpoint in your organization. To give you an idea, so from that point of view, and these statistics, they kind of bounce around between 94 and 96% of attacks these days are via email. Most attacks are coming in by phishing emails by a big margin. And you can see now that it's only sort of 3% that are more that web style that I mentioned earlier. Even the malware is mostly coming through from that email. The concerning thing from my point of view is that, you know, I speak to people daily who say, we've got an email gateway. We've got antivirus. We don't need to be worried about this, which is so far from the truth. It's something that it's really important to understand that, yes, they will stop attacks. And yes, you absolutely need email systems and gateways and antivirus and all of those. You know, when you're building a security posture, it's really important to have a layered approach. You know, the idea is you're not going to stop the bad people from getting in. The idea is to make it so difficult for them to get in, they just lose interest. You know, there's so many layers. And the technology standpoint is fantastic for weeding out those low-hanging fruit attacks, the common attacks, the ones that everyone knows about. But bespoke attacks, brand new attacks, things like this will get through. You know, I know for a fact that our ethical hacking team can create attacks, malware attacks that will bypass mail systems, and they can do it all the time on command, right? So it's important to have it, but just don't fall into that illusion that it's going to save you from everything. It's absolutely not. You need to also be covering off the human element. And the human element is not just phishing, it also relates to the errors, the error side of things as well. And so I mentioned before, errors have really taken off. So what is these errors that I'm talking about? What are these errors that I'm talking about? So it could be as simple as accidentally sending someone something that you didn't mean to that was sensitive, or accidentally putting something up online. Actually, we're seeing a lot of this coming from you know, AWS and all of those online sort of repositories where people are using the storage online, they're putting it up there, sensitive data, and then someone misconfigures it so it's accidentally being accessible from the internet. You know, or I go to send an email of some work-related data to Joe down the hall, and I accidentally sent it to Joe, who is in the media that works at Sydney Morning Herald. You know, those sort of things where people are accidentally making these mistakes, and mistakes happen. But these are becoming some of the biggest ways that data is leaking. And the concern too is that a lot of this, you know, the companies themselves aren't identifying it necessarily themselves. A lot of it's been caught by security researchers, which could be good or bad depending on how you handle it. You know, other third parties, but also it can very often be your customers that are identifying this, which is very much not what you want. And the other thing to be aware of here is how you handle these, when this sort of thing gets reported to you, how you handle it can have a dramatic impact to how it's dealt with in the media, etc. as well. You know, if a security researcher reports it to you, it's not recommended to go and try to say, hey, right, we're going to sue you for having access to this information. Quite often it's better to say, okay, fair enough, thank you so much for your help, because it's kind of frowned upon in the security researcher and the security space that if you try to you know, litigate against someone that's trying to help you, you know, it's likely to hit the media with more ferocity than what it would have otherwise. You know, so it's very important just to have a plan in place for how to deal with people when they report this sort of situation. So, are you part of the problem? The ACSC, again, another quote that came out of that their report. So the ACSC responds to hundreds of cybersecurity incidents each year. Many of those could have been avoided or substantially mitigated by good cybersecurity practices. And again, we're quite often seeing people just hang their hat on the technology infrastructure that they put in place, and there's more to it. You need to be really focusing on so many different areas. And when I say that, it's like, how do you respond to things, for example? So what's your incident response plan? You know, it's not just about training. I know you're probably expecting a training answer, which there is one, but it's not just about that. So, you know, how do you respond to an incident? How quickly are people reporting issues to you, these potential breaches to you, if they've done something wrong? What is the culture within your organization? Do you have a culture that will that makes people kind of think they're going to get in trouble if they report something to you, or do you have a culture that allows people to go, actually, I need to let them know? It's really important, because you know, the thing about people is they will avoid pain as much as possible. And if they think that there's pain that's coming from reporting a phishing email in some form by being berated, etc., quite often they will avoid that pain for as long as possible, even if it means they're going to have more pain in the future. You know, it's human nature. And so culturally, having a really good culture towards an accepting culture to, oops, you've done the wrong thing, you better report it, thank you very much, you know, this is fantastic, incredibly important. Having a culture that is understanding of security, that thinks about security often is, it's, by the way, cultures are hard to get right, but if you can get it right, the rewards are outstanding. The difference between a good security culture and a bad security culture from what we see is dramatic. It's definitely worthwhile trying to get there. And so having a culture that people are actually wanting to learn, that they understand the problem, and another one actually is, how do you make sure that what people are learning, it's important that it's not just for them. You want it to be something that they can then on-teach to their family, you know, to their children, to their parents, you know, whatever it is. If they can be comfortable teaching people, then that's the level of understanding is so far superior than what they get if they're just doing training for, you know, as a tick and flick exercise, you know. So things like this, there's little tips and tricks that you can do in your environment to really build a strong culture that will dramatically change the way that you approach incidents like this and save you tons of money. So what does it actually mean? Well, I mean, firstly, most people in your organization are probably extremely trusting people. Most people are. If you're talking to people around you, most of them aren't really thinking, oh, this guy's trying to scam me, you know, or this person's going to do the wrong thing by me. Most people are actually very, very trusting people. And you need to put almost a little seed of doubt in their mind. You need to get them to think about things just a little bit differently. So I'm talking to someone on the phone. How do I know that the person that I'm talking to is actually the person that I think they are? You know, how do I verify that before I give them this sensitive information? I get an email from the CEO, but it just seems a touch out of character. Do I follow it or do I just verify it in some way? You know, are you giving them a framework on how to think about phishing emails in a critical way? How to evaluate phishing emails in a way that allows it to make super clear sense to them when they're evaluating it and get a very quick understanding on if it is or is not a phishing email. Like things like this, if you can give people those skills, and it's possible, you can give them. A lot of people think the training doesn't work. You can do it. Definitely you can do it. If you can start to do that, then you'll start to change that culture. And changing the culture is seriously one of the most important things that you could do within your organization when it comes to cybersecurity. Actually, just one more thing before I get to Eckhart. If you haven't done this already, quick win for you. If you aren't using two-factor authentication within your environment for, you know, O365, email, etc., I would be implementing that as soon as possible. It is one of the quickest wins you can get. That's a technical control, and it works. As an example, Google, at the start of early last decade, they had an attack where it was essentially a credential capture attack. They gave over their credentials, and then someone from Europe, I can't remember where, they got access to sensitive data. It was a big deal at the time. On the back of that, they implemented YubiKeys or Yubi tokens, which is essentially a form of two-factor authentication. It doesn't matter too much what type you're using. They implemented that almost immediately. And across all of Google since then, they claim 0 credential-based successful hacking attacks. So that one change can dramatically secure your environment. It's a super quick win. And you know, there's many different ways to implement it. It's one that I would recommend doing as soon as possible, if you don't have it already. So Eckhart Tolle. Who is Eckhart Tolle? Eckhart Tolle is a kind of a new agey author. And we really only included him here for two reasons. One is that his name starts with E, and it fits really well with email and errors. But the more important question is that he has this great quote, which is, awareness is the greatest agent for change. When you look at the stats in the ACSC report and Verizon reports and things like this, as well as when we look at the way that we've helped companies, the risk of errors and emails can be mitigated, but it really starts with making people aware. If people don't know what they don't know. Also, people don't care what they don't care about, so it's important to make it engaging at the same time. But by getting people to understand what it is, understand what the responsibility that they have over the data that they look after. What is their responsibility? What is their responsibility for making sure it doesn't leak out of an environment? What are the different ways that it can leak out of an environment? You know, how do you know who you're talking to is who you think it is? You know, those sort of things. Really, that's the start of this change that we're talking about. And if you can do that, you can start to make sure that you reduce that attack vector as well. You don't have people like Joan from earlier sending it out to 17 other colleagues. You know, it shortcuts it. They know how to report these things directly. They do it quickly. You know, there's a whole raft of different benefits you get from that, and cost savings too, around not having to do as many password resets or computer rebuilds and all of these different things. There's a lot of cost savings that can go along with this. So to give you just a quick understanding here of what sort of changes are possible. So we deal with a lot of government agencies and across local, state, federal, and this is just a few little case studies here. So this one, local government, 300 staff, they had a 20.6% click-through rate. So 20.6% is essentially what their risk assessment was up front. How likely are they to click on a phishing email? And so 1 out of 5 people is clicking on a phishing email. After the training, we're able to get that down to 3.8%. So, you know, 5.4 times decrease in risk. This one here, the state government, they had a much lower baseline. They started off, their risk was substantially lower as it was. Typically, this is because they've already got some sort of training implemented, or they've already started to work on this. And you can see the same for this federal one, 8.9% initial baseline. But what we typically see as a baseline result is around about 21%. So you can see they'd already made significant changes, but we were able to get them down to 1.6 and 2.5% respectively, like huge decreases in risk that we're able to get for these organizations, regardless on if they're already doing training or not. And this comes down to the approach, right? So in order to create that culture, you have to take a different approach. And the way that phishing in particular is normally done is it's all about tricking people, and we don't take that approach. Our goal is to train people, not trick people. We want to grow people, not assume they're experts after 5 minutes of training. And over time, we build them up, and we give them the ability to learn and to grow and to get wins. And that's so important. Getting wins, especially in phishing, is one of the most powerful things that you can do to getting them to change their attitude. People hate being tricked, you know, people hate they feel untrusted, you know, so getting away from that and giving them a positive experience over time that builds up with them is really important. So the other part to that too, I mentioned saving cost. If you can get people in that right frame of mind, you will absolutely save in cost across your IT department and other areas. And then, I mean, if we're talking ransomware, like we've seen some huge high-profile ransomware cases recently, which has taken businesses out for months. Like, what would happen to your organization if it was taken out for months? You know, that's serious, you know. If you can reduce the risk of that alone covers the cost. But also the cost of running a really good phishing campaign is actually huge. We know other organizations that will pay people to do it. They have a full-time person running phishing for them, which is a huge cost. So we designed ours to be fully automated. It'll work 24/7, 365. Once you set it up, it'll do everything for you. So you're saving cost there as well, which is obviously important in this day and age. So what's next? We've actually prepared for you a couple of little sheets, PDFs for you that you can use. So the first one is 5 tips for creating a more secure government staff culture. Second is, and this is for you on the call, the other one is 5 tips to avoid online scams. And this is for your employees. This is something that you can start to engage, start to raise that awareness, send it out to people, teach them about the scam framework for identifying phishing emails, that sort of thing. Super valuable information in there that I recommend. You can grab it from the handout section, which is included in this webinar. Otherwise, after this, we will be sending it out to you as well. So I'm hoping that you found that information valuable, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you have now, and I'll hand back to Laura to help with that. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Damien. So we do have a few questions that have come through. So you spoke about obviously social attacks and errors, but what are maybe some of the lesser prominent types of attacks that are also affecting businesses at the moment?
Lesser prominent. Less prominent's a hard one to answer. I mean, there's the sort of things that we're seeing at the moment from a phishing standpoint is ransomware, very high. Business email compromise / CEO fraud, very high. But then there's a lot of other ones that don't hit mainstream media that you don't necessarily hear a lot about. Things like actual, the nation state style of attacks where they're actually trying to pivot into the environment. They're trying to stay very hidden. They're trying to exfiltrate information out of the organization, things like that. But I mean, they're less common, but they can be devastating. And they're also, I think I can't remember what the actual stat is, but it's something like 2 months or 3 months or something before they're usually even found on average. That's that type of attack. So yeah, it's a difficult one to answer in terms of less common attacks.
That's all right. That sounds like a good answer to me. One other question here, someone asking about for high-risk users in your organization, what's the best way to address the people that are potentially clicking on phishing attacks all the time?
It depends on how you categorize high risk. Historically, people have categorized high risk as the CEO, people that have access to specific data, or people that are, essentially have God rights, admin rights, etc. Or are you talking about the high risk ones that have clicked, 5 out of the last 6 phishing emails? To answer the first part of that, if you're talking high risk in terms of execs, etc., often I don't typically break them down into that risk category as being high or low risk in that situation, because there's plenty of examples out there of the old RSA attack. They got in through HR, and once you're on the network, and this is also from my penetration testing background, once you're on the network, it'd be very rare for us to go into an environment, sit down at a desk, and not have admin access and of some form before lunch. It's like it's not hard to get admin access. So with a phishing attack, you've already got that initial foothold in the environment. So then upgrading that into a high level, or moving around the environment or around the network, etc., is usually pretty trivial. So I personally look at it, every single person that has access to a computer as being high risk within an organization. Going to the other side, though, if you're talking about high risk, how many people are clicking on phishing emails, if they're doing it all the time, we typically try to hand that back to the organization, and we can help them with it. But what we try to do there is say, How is it, have you spoken to these people? What did they pass the training? Often you'll find that these people did pass the training. They understand it in full, they just don't implement it. Maybe it's as simple as English isn't their first language. So that initial conversation of understanding why, at least with a system like this, it can allow you to pinpoint those super high risk people. If you've got, we will allow you to see the people that are absolutely the highest risk to clicking on phishing emails within a period of time. You can pinpoint them, you can have a conversation with them, not in a bad way, very important not to have it in a bad way. And then you could do things like have a monthly one-on-one or a webinar session maybe, or face-to-face training, not so much in COVID times, but it allows you to take something that's potentially a higher cost, such as a face-to-face or a webinar, versus something like friendly phishing, which is low cost and scale. It takes that more expensive cost and allows you to focus it in specifically where you need it most to give that person exactly what they need to be successful.
Perfect. Thanks, Damien. That is the end of the questions that we've got so far. I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Damien, for your talk. It was very insightful, I think, and hopefully everyone here found it interesting and helpful as well. As mentioned by Damien, we do have a couple handouts for you, which you can download in the handouts section of this talk, or we will email them to you as well. But if you have any other questions, please shoot us a note at hello@friendlyphishing.com or visit our website, and we'd love to have a chat with you. So thanks, Damien.
Thanks, everyone.